Today, I show you how to UV unwrap an object like this and get it into a game engine. This is Unreal Engine 4, and it's basically the tentacle that I made that used curves that I just kind of show you how to paint and export it, get it into a game engine. Anyway, stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Kevin with Inventormark, and today we're going to be going over how to UV unwrap something like this and what we can do to texture it and things like that. And first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to kind of reduce the amount of polygons that are in this thing, because there's a ton of them now, because we had to make it so that big so we could get that detail. But what we really need to do first is reduce this down, because we really don't need all of this geometry in there. And there's a trick that I learned from this guy here. His name's Bryson Jack, and it's a way of reducing the geometry, and it actually works really good. And I got this idea from him on how to reduce the geometry and everything. So first thing you need to do is go into the line select mode and press Control and Alt at the same time and select a row like that, and it'll select all of them. And go to checker deselect, and it'll deselect every other one. And then you can do edge loops under select, and it'll select all the edge loops along the entire thing, and it just selects all of those. And then all you do is just press X and delete edge loops, and it reduces the geometry. And you can do this multiple times, which that's what I'm going to do here. So we did that, and deselect everything, and this time we can go, I'll go here and select checker deselect, select edge loops, X edge loops, and that's reduced it quite a bit, but I'm going to do even more, because we really don't need all of this geometry. We just want to have the suction cups down at the bottom selected. And select edge loops, delete loops. That's reducing it quite a bit. And you could probably do one more on the length here. And then edge loops, and then the edge loops. And there we just reduced the model quite a bit. We still have quite a bit of geometry down at the bottom for all the detail and everything. But on the rest of this that we have, it basically cuts everything down to a more simple solution here. We still have all the necessary geometry. It cut some of it up a little bit, which is okay, because it still looks just fine. And everything looks just like it did before. There's no changes to it really. It's just there's less polygons. We cut it down quite a bit here. I didn't see what it was before, but it's better now. And to UV unwrap this, what I've found works the best for this model. It's probably not the best way to do it, and the best way to do it would probably be to follow a line along the bottom here, or just somewhere, but to get a full selection there, just mark that top line as a seam, and then go around the edge here. Probably go with the, oh, I'm actually gonna go ahead and select that whole thing there. Mark that as a seam. And I need to zoom on this end here, it's kind of small. Get that whole thing there. And the this line goes all the way to the end here. And so mark seam on that. And so what the mark seam kind of does is it makes it so that that's where you want to cut it, basically. Just imagine like a soda can or something. That's what this basic thing is. It's a big long soda can that's curved around and everything. That's how we're going to be unwrapping it. And to unwrap it, I'm going to go ahead and close these down. Hit the right button first. And change it to UV image editor. And so how to do this, just unwrap and then unwrap. And it unwraps the entire thing into an image like this. As you can see, it's just basically unwrap the entire thing in this small little thing. We can't really resize it that much because the texture that we have, that we're going to be making, has to fit on this. It's only going to be using partial of the 2048 by 2048, usually what I make for the size. So what I'm going to do is create a new texture, 2048 by 2048. And so this is going to be the texture for it. And I'm actually going to go switch back from cycles to Blender render. I've gotten better results with texturing and things like that with this. And go out of edit mode, create a new material for it, a new texture, and then it's already on image movie. I'm just going to make that this texture so that we can go into texture mode. And basically go to paint mode too. Go to texture paint, turns it back to black so you can see. And this goes to paint. And I'm just going to show you kind of what it does. So we have this here. So I just painted a line across it, and you can see that it painted a line across that. It's not lined up because I painted it on here. You can see how it kind of paints like that. That's how this works. So you see if I paint on here, it paints on both sides of it evenly. So whatever you paint along the seam where it is, it's going to paint on both sides of that. And to resize the brush, you press F. So I'm just going to paint the whole thing red. It's kind of a bright red. Don't really need to be that bright. And I'm actually going to go out of texture and paint mode for a little bit and just go to solid object. I'm going to add a couple of lights. So a sun lamp. That doesn't really need to be anywhere specific. And an area lamp. Rotate it around. That way when we go into render view, we can kind of see what's going on with it. Just to have light overall. And that's not the painting and anything, that's just the way the shading on the lights is going right now. Okay, so let's go back into paint texture mode. Make sure the object's selected. So I'm just going to leave this in rendered mode and kind of put it on there where it's kind of not so bright, but you can still kind of see what's going on. And let's see here. Change the size down a little bit. Shift F, you can change the shading amount. A little opacity of it. And I'm just doing something real kind of quick here just to kind of show what's going on with it. I really don't have any plan or use for this. I'm just kind of showing how to do it. Okay, and these are the ends here. It's kind of solid. Don't want to do that. Okay, so now you can see I just kind of put a basic texture on it. I just kind of just for color. But what I'm going to do now is actually add in a texture. So what we need to do is go over to textures over here. And there's three different things up here. There's a world texture, that's just for like the background and stuff. There's a material texture, that's the one we're currently working on. And then there's a brush texture. I'm going to add a new brush texture, and it should be in textures. And you can pretty much use whatever texture you want. I was going to use something like leather, like this. Actually, let's use that one. So this is actually a leather texture. I'm going to get out of rendered mode. Okay, and you can see there's a little thing right there. That's not the actual texture. That's an actual oops that I did right here because it kind of boils over. But in order to use the texture, it's there right now because we selected it over here. And when you paint with textures, whatever size the brush is however far away it is. Let's see, if I zoom in, it's going to be smaller. Zoom out, it's going to be bigger. So you kind of want to keep the same distance at all times. And I'm going to undo that. So I want this to be kind of just a hint of texture, not a whole lot. So I kind of want to keep that color. And Control and Shift, you can rotate the angle that you're going. It kind of comes in handy when you're, especially when you're painting. See here, if we start painting, we'll paint all that too on accident. And we don't want to do that. So what we need to do is we need to rotate it. Here's where it gets kind of tricky to paint because the lighting that's on here, I can't actually see what's going on. Oh, I can't see with that either. Okay, go into rendered mode. This is going to be a little bit tricky, but might work. Oh, it's not quite working. I just have to hope it kind of works. Not being able to see it. Next one. And so you kind of cut it off there. So now that we have it kind of shaped somewhat how we want, what we can do is zoom in here, and it stretches along the edge there. So what we can do now is kind of go in and soften it up and soften this edge. I know it's kind of boring watching somebody paint. It's like watching paint dry, but this is how to do it though. At least how I do it. It just has to be strong enough to cover up the overlap. And see, kind of got onto that a little bit. We can fix it by going into the middle area a little bit. Make it smaller now. But the main point we need to get is this to match the other side where it goes. That's the hardest part. You just go back the other way. The only thing that with this excuse me, with this specific model, the hard part is that it's such a small object. It's hard to get mapped out really well, and you get a lot of pixels on it because the way that it's textured. You could possibly spread it out a little bit more, but then you'd have to do all of these individually, and that's just way overcomplicated and would take a lot of time. This right now is taking a lot of time anyway. It's just basically kind of going over the mistakes that went on to begin with. So it's all kind of blended in, so we can take a look now. Kind of see what it looks like. It's looking okay. I'm going to go over it with the, because this is all messed up here, but it's blended in somewhat okay. It's still kind of rough there. Oh, wrong thing. There we go. Excuse me. So this is kind of harsh. Kind of blend that a little bit better. I don't know if it's this side or the other one, but okay, so we're going to go over the middle now. So I'm going to take a little bit more time and make this kind of really strong. And dim the color. So I want to get rid of the texture, so there's not texture anymore. This I'm going to kind of make random, so it doesn't look too perfect. A lot of times with renderings you got to make them look somewhat natural by making natural flaws that would be in it. Sometimes when things look too perfect they look a little bit out of place. Then there's other times where it's too out of place that it looks too perfect. Just like that. And you can see what this looks like. Okay, so that's better. Those weird angles are just the way the faces are pointing. It gives it kind of a weird shadow, but so it looks okay for as far as texturing goes. I'm going to go ahead and do one last thing to the thing, then I'll show how to kind of get all this imported or exported into like different game systems. Kind of how that works. Try to get it as close as you can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of size it down as you go. Then you get down to the small areas like this. Only a few pixels that are color and everything. Okay, so we can go see what this looks like now. depth and dimension to it. That end there. It's got the same texture as everything else. See, that really doesn't matter. I'm not going to really mess with that. But it just kind of shows what is going on with the end texture. Like I can make that right here. Make that black. Yeah. Kind of a cutoff end there, but you could spend a lot more time on it, make it way more detailed. And so what we need to do now is actually we need to save this. I'm going to save this image as tentacle, how do you spell that one? Diffuse, some tutorials directory. And so what we need to do, go ahead and close that. Close that. So now we are in regular mode. Actually, we're in solid. We can go to rendered now. The seam bleeds through kind of a little bit. Not sure why it's doing that. Shouldn't be. We should have been able to paint on there pretty well. But now what we need to do is go to the material, go to the textures, and for this texture, right now it's still on our untitled texture. We need to change that. We need to open up a new one and change that to our one that we just saved as. And with this texture, what we can do is use the UV map and put a normal map on it. We don't need much of a more normal map, like 0.15 or something maybe. This gives it a little bit of texture to it. Maybe even smaller than that. And I do need to have a window open here. Oh, didn't want to do that. Okay, so change this to a UV map again. I want to create a new one and just name it untitled. And we're going to go back to the main properties panel, bake options, and do a normal map bake. And it wasn't selected for some reason. Oh. Okay. It's kind of tricky. I forget how to do it every time. Okay, now it's working. Okay, so it baked the normal map that was of the texture that we just made into a normal map onto this object. So we can now save this image as, we'll rename it tentacle diffuse normal map. Save that. So what we can do now is with textures, you can actually add a new texture, open tutorials, and add that back in as a texture. So now these are both textures on the object. This first one, you can actually uncheck that. And the second texture map, we can select the UV map, and under image sampling, check normal map. Now we can close that and go into rendered view, and it's showing up goofy again because I had the color checked on the normal map. So now it should be displaying properly. Might not be displaying properly in Blender right now, but it will be in whatever game engine you export it to. So what we need to do is select this object and export FBX for excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my throat today. Name this Octo Test FBX. This is going to be for Unreal Engine, and just go to Unreal Engine. I have it open here. Make a new folder. So test, import, and where'd it go? Tutorials, Octotest. There we go. Import all. I forgot to add the smoothing groups, but that's okay. It's kind of big. Scale it. And as you can see, whoop. I always forget how to. I don't know why that red's showing. It must not have got the edge very good on some of the spots when I painted it, but so that's showing through a little bit. You can manipulate the colors and add a couple different ones in. Just name each one of these. And just change the value. Rough, let's leave it that. Specular. Metallic, you can actually move that one up and make it look a little shiny. So you have a, makes it look kind of wet. A little wet effect there. It's a little weird, but looks okay there. For a quick example anyway, it looks pretty good. Then for Unity, I hardly ever use Unity anymore, but and actually I can't import anything yet because I need to save it. Save as. Import asset and again. Import the entire blend file, which that's one good thing about Unity is it has the capability of importing the entire blend file. See, that even gave it a little bit of its own new geometry, the tris instead of quads. And material, I'm not sure how to make the material. I haven't really even worked with Unity for a couple of years now. A lot of you are probably watching this thinking, what's he doing? Oh, it's secondary maps. Okay, that was the problem. That's all it was. That looks a lot better now. Still a little bit of it. Yeah. Cut there and there. Okay. Alright, so let's look like that's working now. See what the bottom looks like. Just rotate it. Oh, it's alright. Actually, I kind of like the way that it looks in here better than it does on Unreal Engine. Gives it more of a realistic texture look. Anyway, go back to Blender. That's not Blender. Which one's Blender? There we go. That is basically how to create a texture map for an object like this and to UV unwrap it and to get it into one of the two main game engines right now. I probably should have spent a little bit more time working on getting this seam better. You can see that it's kind of bleeding through a little bit on the edge there. But if you take your time and get it right, it should work for you. Anyway, thanks for watching.